Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Powered by the Monroe County Reporters. Here are your hosts, Jason Harwood and Jacob Litton.
Welcome to Talking Grit, coming to you live, 5:30 in the afternoon. This is crazy. With the daylight, we are not vampires. This is actually happening. Maybe we'll get some more people on our chat. Today, we are going to talk about the draft, of course. Going to talk about some offense first. Next week, we got a special guest coming on. We're going to really focus on defense, do a couple mock drafts next week. But today we're going to focus on the offense because there's some other stuff that we want to talk about. The Ragnow stuff, the Decker stuff. We signed a new safety. We'll get to all that. And I'm going to be with, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Jacob is in a current lawsuit with Caleb Williams. Yeah, I know you guys have heard of the Iceman stuff, but Jacob really thinks that he owns the Iceman because of all his freezing cold takes. So he's locked in this lawsuit. So if he's distracted, just forgive him because he's getting calls with his lawyers and stuff. But now, seriously though, Jacob, you're in a new space, man. Congratulations. Why don't you tell everybody why you got a new space there and what can we expect?
First off, how long did it take for you to come up with the Iceman joke and direct it at me?
Oh man, I had that and I was waiting for it, but when I saw that, I said I want to use the Iceman joke. I'm just glad that it worked.
Swing and miss. No, I'm in a different, still same house, but I'm in my own office area, formerly known as the walk-in closet. It's a spacious area. I've got kind of halfway down. I've got a little bit of a setup back here. Gonna be working remote like Jason, so maybe I'll have some more time to prepare and try to keep putting out good content for you guys because Jason's just been kind of slacking all the time in the world, and he's still just coming up with these
All
lame Iceman jokes.
Yeah, I know. That's what I spent my whole time. I spent all day in my remote job coming up with that joke.
You were so proud of it too.
I was. So, no, it's cool, man. You got that. It was neat seeing you had that space. I like it. It's got the Bad Boys. We can see the Bad Boys hat over there in the corner. It's pretty sweet, man.
Yeah, right. I'm digging it.
So, I also want to tell you that our listeners now is that we might have some special things now that Jacob's gone remote. We might be able to do a morning show now too. So I think we're still going to keep the weekly evening show going because that's just how we do things, but we'll be able to quicker to react things. So maybe during draft week, maybe we'll be able to do, quick reaction show in the morning. Kind of got to see what Jacob's schedule is going to be like, how that job's going to line up for him. But it is exciting because I think there's going to be more opportunities for us to do stuff together and to collaborate. And before we go too far, Ash is saying hi in the chat. So what's up, Ash? Yeah.
I thought of him right away with the 5:30 thing. I was like, man, Ash could get on and it won't be 3 a.m. over there.
That's right. I know. He's always listened to us on Spotify the next day just because, unless he's on with us, just because of how, screwed up that's, time differences. But all right, man, let's get into this Lions talk. We're going to start with draft talk. And what we're going to do is go position by position. I think a lot of us expect this draft to be defensive focused or the interesting picks be on the defensive side outside of the first round with offensive tackle or second round, depending on how that flips. The skill positions are going to be interesting. Do we have a need there? Maybe not an immediate need, but there could be a long-term need on that. So we're going to question each other on do you think we're going to draft this position? When do you think it's going to be there? And I don't know about Jacob, but I have a couple thoughts on each position of players I do or don't want, and we'll go from there. So we're going to start with QB, probably not a very interesting position as far as the Lions are concerned, unless they drafted one real early. Then it becomes super interesting, but I just don't see that happening. So do you think we even draft a quarterback this year, Jacob?
I do not think that we draft a quarterback this year. I think the most likely route is that we find some guys that we like to go undrafted free agent practice squad route.
Yep.
Do you think we draft a quarterback?
No, and I don't think that we do. And I think you're right. It's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised to see an undrafted quarterback. Now, say there's someone that we like that's undrafted. I could see them doing 7th round just to not, say it's someone they really like and they don't want to risk the undrafted free agent. I could see a 7th rounder being used on one just so that they have to come to camp with us. But I don't really see that being an option for the Lions.
Do you think they would have a quarterback that they love that they would really want to like take a pick in the 7th round though? I mean, who is like a can't miss guy in round 7 where we would feel like, some sort of way if we missed out on getting him in camp?
Yeah.
At quarterback anyway. You're right.
I don't see anybody, but I could tell you who I do not want them to take. That's all I have is one, do not take Carson Beck. I don't think we would draft him. I just can't stand the kid. So that's my own personal belief. Just, he always would blow it every game that I watched him, and I just didn't like his demeanor. I didn't like anything about Carson Beck, but is there anybody that
maybe if he's there in round 6, 7, or if he goes undrafted, maybe that's somebody, high potential that you bring in and see. But overall, I'm not a fan of Carson Beck either. As it is right now, the only player that I found that we had any sort of like meeting with is Cole Payton out of North Dakota State. And that's a guy that he's a dual threat quarterback that is drawing comparisons to Taysom Hill. Which would be very weird for us to use a draft pick on somebody like that. But is somebody, hey, if we're meeting with them, maybe we like the upside. Maybe that's somebody we get in here as an undrafted free agent and see what we can do with them. I don't see quarterback being addressed in the draft.
Yeah. You meet someone like that, especially if they're big like Taysom Hill, are you thinking that, position switch? Are you thinking of, something like that?
Right.
And then, if you have someone of the unique skills of Taysom Hill, I mean, he wasn't ever like a quarterback threat where you're going to like hand the offense to him. But was he tricky enough that he could use them on some trick plays? I mean, most time you would see him as a QB sneak. And I don't even know if it was a sneak because you kind of knew it was coming. But he was so big, it was really effective. So, I think quarterbacks pretty much, unless we draft someone early, there's no big notes on me. I do want to give a shout out to Tim Loomis is on there. I love your show, guys. Born in Michigander, but transplanted to Illinois. He's trying to neutralize those Bears fans. Well, if they build that stadium in Indiana, then they won't be you'll have to move to Indiana to neutralize them. All right, man. Let's move to running back. I really think that this is an interesting position for the Lions. You might not think there's a need there, and there might not be so much this year, but I think going in the future there is. So if we're drafting ahead, there's a couple of interesting prospects I have here. So I'm going to say that they're going to draft a running back this year. I'd be pretty surprised if they don't. How about you, Jacob?
I think if I'm betting like yes or no with running back, this was the hardest one for me to like think about, but I also said no, that we don't draft a running back. But I do have somebody I have my eye on too. And it does make sense to draft a running back in like rounds 4 through 7. Pacheco is only on a 1-year deal, right? So we need to find somebody, with a higher upside than him possibly too, that could potentially play right away or play in the future. So we have 6 running backs on the roster right now. Only probably 3 of them, right? I would say Gibbs, Pacheco, and Vaki are the only ones that are like definite safe. You would hope that Vaki is a definite safe. Don't see them pulling the plug on that already. But the other running backs, Jacob Saylors, Kai Robichaud, Jabari Small, none of those guys are guaranteed spots. And there could even be undrafted free agents that come in and take one of those spots from them too. But who, I've got one guy, but, you said you've got a couple guys.
I got 3 guys.
Yeah,
3 guys. My first guy is Nick Singleton out of Penn State.
That's my guy. So
is that your guy?
Agreed there.
All right. So the thing that I like about him is that he shows patience in the backfield, which reminds me of Dave Montgomery. I like that. Got good size, can't catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, I know we got Jameer, but it's nice when you have this guy, another guy. It was nice that Dave Montgomery could catch out of the backfield. I just look at him as a good replacement, a 1-to-1 replacement on that. He doesn't have like top end speed where he's going to be running away from guys, but he's got enough speed to hit the hole in an effective manner. So what did you like about Nick?
So just from the jump, like if we're talking about like growing into the position, he can return kicks. So I think he's a better version of Jacob Saylors. He can return the kicks. He's more explosive. The downside, I think, for us is that I think he showed really well at the combine and the pro day that, his size, his speed, his explosiveness. He was projected to be a day 3 pick. Now maybe that's creeping a little bit higher. Maybe he's not there when we're looking, in rounds 4 through 7. But he's the one who I had my eye on as well. 6 foot, 219. He's more similar to Montgomery's size than to Gibbs. And I think he complements Gibbs really well and kind of gives us that 1-2 punch. So if we draft a running back, that's who I have my sights set on is Nick Singleton. He was also like one of the top recruits coming out. He played 4 years at Penn State, right? I think he's a senior. So, I mean, he's got tons of experience. I really like that one. That's the only one that I had my eye on, though. You said you got a couple more.
I got a couple more.
Are these also day 3 picks, or these guys we'd have to take earlier?
The later ones, the next two are definitely day 3 picks. Nick Singleton's a guy that, you're probably, I think he's a day 2 pick. So either we're trading up to get him in the 3rd round. I'd be really hesitant to use our 2nd round pick on him. I don't think I would want to spend that capital, but that's just the way,
he's one of those guys, like the metrics are all there. Like, if you're looking at his measurements, if you're looking how he's tested, it's all there. But if you look how the last couple of seasons have went for him at Penn State, where he's had like all the opportunities to run, he doesn't really break off that many. For him being as fast and explosive as he is, he doesn't break off as many runs as you'd think that he would.
Yeah.
But I think that also, what he's shown on tape might be why he's a day 3 pick. I think round 3 or 4 for him.
Okay. Well, we've got 2 4th round picks. So if he slips that far, then he's definitely, an option for us. The 2 later round guys I have that I just find interesting is Adam Randall. He's from Clemson. He was a wide receiver that converted to running back. He is going to be like one of those projects, but he is built. He's pretty big. I think that he would be good as a possible returner. He is just someone that's late. I just think that he might slip in the draft and he doesn't have a lot of mileage on his tires. So I think that he's interesting. The next guy is a very long shot just because of his history, and that's Seth McGowan from Kentucky. Great power back. He can catch out of the backfield. However, he's had some off the field issues. He had a felony robbery charge, but that was like 3 or 4 years ago. So maybe he's turned his life around, but Lions tend to not go with guys of checkered past like that, but I'd be interested in him.
I like the shouts out to the Kentucky guy.
Yeah.
I don't see the Lions rolling the dice on him. The first guy that you named, Randall, he's a really big. Did you say how big he is? He's big back, right?
He's 6'1". I don't know his weight, but I know he's 6'1". So he's big, but also when you talk about maybe someone with some return skills, the Lions like big, bigger people and returning kicks. So that's where someone you could maybe use him right away. I know we got Dortch, but we only signed Dortch for 1 year. So
and Dortch is small.
And Dortch is small, right? But he still has shown that ability to return kicks. So I just he's not your long-term player that you're going to use there. All right, Jacob. Let's move on to wide receiver. Don't see an immediate need for wide receiver. So do you think that we even go with a wide receiver this year? I definitely think you're going to get some undrafted free agents, but do you think we draft one?
I also said no for receiver. So, I mean, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, if I'm betting on these, I still said no for all 3.
Yeah.
I think, so running back, if you like someone, I think you take a shot at running back. Wide receiver, with where the room is and where, who we have right now, you would have to absolutely love somebody, like you can't miss. And they'd have to be there in like round 6 or 7, right? Like, can you imagine them drafting we don't have a round 3. Can you imagine going like round 2 receiver again?
Oh, yeah.
Like, just, there's way too many other spots that we need. There's 4 probably locks on the roster. There could be 5, depending on where you feel about Lovett, who was a draft pick last year.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see us drafting a receiver in here.
Yeah, Dortch is, we only signed for 1 year. So you're going to need someone, if you find someone that you think can replace him, you're going to do that. But then again, he's taking up a roster spot. But if you're not in love with Lovett, then he's off. He's off, and then you got a draft pick in there. So let me ask you this. If they did draft a wide receiver, like what style of wide receiver would you want them to get? Like, do you have someone that would fit on this roster? Like, what would you be looking for?
It's interesting. So let me just shout out the guy that I have on here. So we had a top 30 visit with wide receiver from Marshall to Marcus Lacey. who is not a very big receiver. He's a converted running back who plays exclusively in the slot. They use him a lot in the screen game, and he scored very high on Pro Football Focus when it came to screen passes and like passes just beyond the line of scrimmage. But he doesn't offer a whole lot, downfield or anything else. So that was surprising to me that they used a visit. They met with him because that's somebody I think is like an undrafted free agent target. If I'm looking like if we're drafting a receiver, I think I would prefer having like a big body downfield threat, similar to like what we think we have with Tesla.
Okay. The guy I'm looking at, and I only have one guy on my list here because I don't know if we're going to go with wide receiver, at least not like if we go, it's going to be 7th round or later. But if we, go a little bit earlier, Barry Brown out of Kentucky, guy's got elite speedster, special teams, do slot, outside trick plays, all the stuff you wanted to do. Because like you're looking for someone. For me, you're looking for someone that could replace Dortch. Like you want a yak guy, you want someone that adds something to your offense that you don't necessarily have. Now, Jamo obviously has top end speed, but I want someone with special teams ability, and then you could still throw them in the offense, kind of like what we do with Khalif, right? We don't know what we're going to do with Dortch, but I want some guy with elite speed. I think that you just get a weapon and you use him 5 to 7 times a game, and he makes you just want him to have a game breaking play. I think that ultimately, if we're going to draft wide receiver, I want plus special team skills, mostly as a returner. Could he develop into a punt returner? I want those type of things because, like I said, George is here 1 year. So
right, Barry and Brown is also small, and he's fast. He left Kentucky for LSU, and then I don't even know if he scored a touchdown for LSU last year.
Yeah,
it seemed like he just got buried.
Yeah,
but speed kills.
And it happens when you're when you go to LSU when you're a wide receiver, right?
Yeah,
you either shine or get outshined. But we'll see. The next position, I think that there's going to be, definitely going to draft here. I'm going to say before you even ask me the question, are we going to draft someone? We are going to draft a tight end. So what do you think? I think you're going to say yes to.
This is the first one on the list that I said yes. We do draft a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that when we do, it's going to be in rounds like 3 through 6, though. Do you see round 2 tight end, or do you also think middle of the draft?
Yeah,
trade into the 3rd round because we like somebody or, get somebody later.
And I just don't want to give up too much capital, but it kind of also depends on Laporta, right? Like, I just, is he going to be back? I think if we draft if we could draft someone earlier and just as a replacement for Brock Wright too. Like if we see someone that's, what we think they could grow into, I wouldn't be shocked. Like if we draft ones early, it scares me about Laporta, but because I like Laporta and I want him on this team, but it could be also a cost saving moves if we draft early. But I just think the tight end position's so deep that you could get a pretty good playmaker later on as opposed to spending plus capital. Who's the number 1 tight end this year? I can't even remember. Name's escaping me right now.
I don't even have that in front of me because all my guys are later picks.
Yeah, there was one that someone said the Lions were very interested in, but if we went tight end 1st round, oh my God, that I'd throw up.
Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon.
Yes.
Eli Stowers, Vanderbilt, Max Clare from Ohio State. Those are the top 3.
Yeah. I think there's one top tight end, and then the rest are gonna, probably slip to late 1st, get in 2nd. But there's gonna be some guys that you could get later on. I didn't really have anybody picked. I don't really have any idea of that later round pick, but did you have anyone?
I've got 3.
But
the 3 that I have are not necessarily just people that I have had my eyes on, but these are people who the Lions have met with at the combine.
All right.
So
good. Go ahead.
that's a good start if they've met with them at the combine. Doesn't tell the whole story, but so there's 3 that they met with: Joe Royer from Cincinnati, Tanner Koziel from Houston, and then Marlon Klein from Michigan. So I know Marlon Klein, maybe not the other 2, but all these guys are going to be day 3 picks. I don't see any of them going higher than round 4. So these are guys, if we like, that are going to be there later. The guy from Houston, Koziel, is a great receiver, not a very good blocker. Whereas Royer and Klein, both better blockers, they don't have the stats that Koziel does as far as receiving goes. The only one I've seen, close up is Marlon Klein just from Michigan. I know that he showed the receiving threat and he showed that he can block. He's also the guy that is from Germany, I believe. So, I mean, he's still kind of newer to the game. That's somebody that would be an interesting pick in like round 6, round 7 that could potentially, come in and play. I know you mentioned Laporta. The thing about Laporta and where it stands right now is he's not going to be ready to go until OTAs, basically. So, I mean, when this draft happens, you're not really going to know for sure what he looks like. Is he going to be able to go? Therefore, do you feel a pressing need based on how the offense looked without him? Do you feel that need to go round 2 or to get somebody, to help in the receiving game right away? And then do we use 2 tight end sets or what do we do? It's got to be somebody that can block too. It's got to be somebody that's effective in the running game. So if that's your only thing is that you're a good receiver, it's not going to work here.
No, it's not. You're not going to, especially in this draft, knowing that you have Laporta here. I don't see a receiver that's their primary talent. You're going to have to be able to block. I don't know. Like, I think in the 4th round and after is when you could start seeing a tight end. I really do. I would make me a little sick to my stomach if we go waste capital 3rd round, 2nd round. I know we don't have a 3rd round pick, but I'd trade up and use capital in that pick unless someone really falls, but I just don't see that happening.
Right.
The other interesting thing is, the whole Brock Wright, we could cut him, depending on what happens in this draft, that's a cost saving moves that could happen. If you get a good blocker, someone that you think that could come right in and take that spot, you could cut Brock Wright and, save, I think, like $3 to $4 million off the cap, which may be, it may be worth to them.
I would say that's likely if we get somebody in here, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I am worried about our tight end room overall, to be honest with you, if Laporta can't go. I mean, I like the addition of Tyler Conklin because I think he gives you like some of what Laporta can give you. You can receive. Brock Wright's obviously not going to give you any of that. He's there. I mean, he's good. There's a reason why, like, once or twice a season, Brock Wright has those surprise touchdowns or surprise long catches because the defense forgets about him because we don't utilize him that much. And I think part of it was like when Sam went down last year, if you remember, Brock Wright went down almost like the week after, which really hurt our running game just because, that really compounded the thing with Sam being out. Now, Sam hurt us on 3rd down, especially, our 3rd down receiving. But for the run game, it was really compounded with both Sam and Brock out there. So, I mean, that's why you said if we can get another blocking tight end, I think that I'd be happy with that. With some receiving skills, I would like to be able to have the ability to have some receiving skills. But if that's their primary use, then not about that.
That's the problem with the replacements that we had last year, which, I mean, is expected when you pull tight ends like late in the season that are off the street, is that most of them are not going to have those receiving skills. And you hope that they can pick up and block and just be an extra blocker out there. And, they did okay, but we really suffered not having Laporta out there.
Well, also, like, our the depth in our offensive line was lacking. So it's not like you could pull like your swing tackle out there and just them become, a blocking tight end. We were really lacking. Now, if we go out and draft someone and then we got Borum in there for swing tackle, then that, that's I'm all about that. I mean, we could do some damage that way.
Definitely.
Let's trade over the offensive line. We have quite the room right now. Like, I think we've upgraded our depth. Still need, depending on how comfortable you feel about Borum, if we use that 1st round or 2nd round pick on a tackle. I think the more interesting question to me, because I think it's a foregone conclusion for me that we're going to draft a tackle. What about inside? Do you think that we draft some inside offensive lineman, either a center or guard?
Interesting. I have obviously that we're going to draft offensive linemen, but that is, where I'm thinking as well is, do we get 2? Do we get an outside and an inside guy? Because I think a tackle is definitely happening. Do we draft an inside guy that we like, round 4, 5, 6? What do we do there? I mean, we're definitely younger on the inside, right? Caden Mays we have set up. We've got Mahogany, Ratledge, Juice Scruggs now, Miles Frazier, all those guys, at the guard position. Do we add somebody else to the room? I don't think it's necessary to, but I think if obviously they're going to be scouting, they're going to be looking, they're trying to improve the best that they can. You also want that competition there. So I would not be surprised at all if we draft a guard or a center.
Yeah. With our identity, and we saw what happened last year when our offensive line was, not up to our standard. We saw what happened, right? But I when I look at our, inside offensive line depth, now it depends on how you feel about Mahogany. If you're not a Mahogany guy, then you're probably thinking we need to draft someone on that left side. I think Tate Ratledge is going to be good. He was good last year. So yeah, I think he really grew into the position, and I am expecting a big second-year jump. K. Mays, I personally think is going to be an upgrade at center, so I'm okay with that. Now, is he top of the line? No, but I think he's going to be definitely better than Graham. But you got guys like Miles Frazier. What's he going to give you? We don't really know yet, but I know Jacob last year you were really excited about him. So, and then Juice Struggs. We don't
That's
know
just
what we
my
got
face
with
when
him.
you talk. I'm just trying to stay awake.
He's just like, oh my God. Yeah. I had to mute you so the snoring wouldn't come through. Juice Scruggs, now they got him more lined up. I've heard Dan say that they liked what he brought at center, which Michael Neese, that might hurt Michael Neese and he might be, out of there. And then at that point, you'd have a spot for another guard in there. But I'm actually kind of okay with our guard, but I wouldn't mind them drafting someone late and then stash him on the practice squad, a little development, or depending on what they feel about Frazier / Neese, there still might be a spot, on the roster for next year. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. If they find somebody that they like and they're there later in the draft, I'm not going to be surprised at all if they take them. And there's no spots guaranteed for like Miles Frazier was a later round pick. If he doesn't have it, he's expendable. Michael Neese also could go. I mean, you look, we've got a lot of offensive linemen in here. There's not a lot of spots guaranteed.
Yep.
And, we're all about the open competition. If we end up pulling the trigger on somebody in round 5, do we stash them? Do they plug and play? We don't know yet. They're going to get a fair shake.
Well, also, I forgot to mention Ben Barch, too. We signed him. Now, he's had an injury history. He's shown some flashes. Now, if he makes it out unscathed and is not injured, that's another depth piece that you have there. So that's kind of interesting there. Now, the other option is that, we draft someone that's a tackle, but also could kick inside at guard if they're not ready to start right away. So say you don't get him in the first round, you get our tackle in the second round, you're going to start Borum, but you got a guy that, eventually is going to be tackle, but he might kick in at guard while he's developing. I had 2 players for the offensive line that I had tagged we talked first round last time, so I didn't go look at any of the first round guys in there. That our podcast last week still stands. If you haven't seen that, go back and, listen to that if you, who I'd like in the first round. But Jennings Dunker is a guy that is from Iowa, second round possible. He's a guy that's second round. He is a right tackle, but he could kick inside to guard if if you're not going to, if we decide to go to a different position in the first round, he's probably not going to come in right away and start at right tackle. Maybe. I think Borum is going to start the year there, but then you might be able to kick him inside. He's just got a Lions attitude. That's why I think he's on there. Did you have? I have one more.
He looks like somebody that would be next to Tate Ratledge on the line.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
I did not put any offensive linemen. Yeah, right. I didn't put any offensive linemen just because we went to that so heavy with like the early round picks.
Yeah.
Who else you got? You said you got one more?
I did. Yeah. I think it's Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern was the other guy that I saw. Left tackle, could kick inside to guard. He's someone that you would pick later on. He's going to be a day 2 pick, possibly early day 3. And we'll see how it goes.
Tiernan's the one that's from Detroit. So there's connections there.
Yep. And I personally want him to go in the first round and just, get a guy that's just going to step in right there and we got tackle taken care of. But if we go later on, those are the guys that I had earmarked.
I mean, if you look at the depth, because obviously most people are like, okay, it's going to be offensive line or it's going to be edge. If you look where the rooms are at with the offensive line versus where they're at with the edge, I think that's why people are leaning defense first round. The Lions, though, are just going to, whoever's highest on the draft board, they're going to take.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, so when you talk about, tackle or edge, I mean, those are like guys that, okay, some of these guys you could think are going to slip into the second round, but generally out of edge and tackle, if you get a second round guy, it's like quarterback. Those are premium positions. You're getting, second tier guys. Whereas, you almost have to overpay in the draft to get those guys because they're going to just go so early. I think the Lions are in a great spot at 17 to get a tackle that could come in and play, and an edge too. It just depends on who they have higher on their board, in my opinion, because
Right.
they need to have cheaper options at one of those spots. And if we draft a great edge, oh my God, people are flip out in this town. They'll be so happy that we got our edge. Let's see. Ash has been giving us a bunch of draft information. Ash loves the draft, and so he's a very knowledgeable. He disagrees with me on Dunker. He doesn't like him. I know that Brett Whitefield likes him. Tell you, Eric Schlitt does not like Dunker. And then, but Ash did like Tiernan. He said he's going to go top 50. So that means we might have to move him up.
Ooh, top 50 for Tiernan?
Yeah, that's what he says. So we'll see.
That may depend on how the first round plays out and how, how many are left when round 2 starts.
Yep. But, offensive line, especially tackle depth, is just not that great in the league. So those guys will get the pick probably ahead of an overall rating on the board just because of it's a premium position. All right, man. So that's our offensive. I think next week we're going to really go into depth in the defense. I have a lot more thoughts on defensive players, and also we're going to have Peter from the Draft Hub. He's going to be on, going to run a couple mocks for us, and we'll have tons of questions. So we're not done here. We're going to move on to some other topics, but hit us up with the draft stuff. 8:30 live next week. So we'll be doing at least 2 mocks. That's at least my plan right now. And so hit us up with that. All right, Jacob, anything else on the draft before we move on?
Nope, let's go.
All right, quickly, we're going to talk about, he signed a new safety, Chuck Clark. Last year, he played for Pittsburgh. He was on the Jets before that, and Baltimore previously. He's had 80 career starts, so he's got tons of experience. I like this signing. What about you, Jacob?
Yeah, absolutely. Longtime Baltimore Raven, ton of starts underneath his belt, a lot of starting experience, veteran presence. I mean, I really like the pickup too. Somebody that adds a lot to the safety room and can help hold it down until Branch gets back. So I'm absolutely cool with it.
Yeah, I'm down with it too. He's a very good run defender. Which is going to be a positive because that when Branch went down, our run defense really took a step back. And so I like that. Now there are some issues with coverage with him, but this is a depth piece. We're going to get him in there. Now he might be pressing to starting duty early on, depending on the Branch and Kirby situation. But I like that, he's got experience back there. He's not going to be playing frightened. He's going to come in. He's tough in the run game. So I'm okay with the signing. I was happy to see it. I was happy to get some depth. Nothing has been released on his contract, but I'm assuming this is a vet minimum type deal.
Probably. I mean, he did have some starting experience last year, but not a whole lot. I can't imagine us. I mean, based on how the offseason is going, we're not breaking the bank for anybody. So I can't imagine it being a very big deal.
Exactly. All right. The story that just won't stop providing new information. Taylor Decker, Justin Rogers went out and interviewed him. The story got released. Taylor Decker had some, things that he's unhappy about. So I assume you read the article or, most of it, Jacob. Do you have any thoughts on, what Taylor said or how that's portrayed with the Lions?
I mean, honestly, it's kind of just come to light what everybody's kind of thought happened anyway, where they didn't have too many conversations before he decided that he was going to come back, or he just was not under the impression that when he came back, he wouldn't be welcome with open arms at his current rate. He didn't realize that him coming back was going to be contingent on the pay cut. Exactly kind of how we thought it played out. I don't like that he said that there was not a whole lot of contact between them, and that he mentioned that now that it's said and done and over with, he hasn't heard from the team at all.
Yeah.
That part kind of rubs me the wrong way, especially to hear that Ben Johnson reached out to him. Lions, nobody in the Lions did. I still feel like he's probably extremely salty about the way that it played out. He's not happy about it. The fact that he did this interview and had Justin Rogers come to his house and had this release like that, just another bad look for the Lions.
Yeah, I think this is more of a bad look for Taylor than it is the Lions, to be honest with you. So it's really interesting when you read the article. He basically made it sound like he's saying that he let it know that he wasn't going to come back for less money. But then he also says at some point that money wasn't discussed by the Lions. So my feeling is that like he let them know like, hey, I'm not coming back for less money. And the Lions go, okay. But I don't think probably the Lions said, no, we're not going to ask you to take a pay cut. And then later on said, hey, we need to take you a pay cut. I think they just took that information and said, okay, that's that's what it is what it is. He's not going to take a pay cut. And then they did their offseason planning. And then all of a sudden they're like, we're not going to be able to afford Taylor, um, and with his play. Now, if he's playing at 3 years ago, Taylor Decker, they probably make that concession and they're like, we're going to make it, alternative plans. But if you're going to have a guy that's going to be week to week, whether he's going to playing at diminished returns, 75, 60% of his optimal, you're going to have to make those concessions. I hated the part of the article that said that Ben Johnson called. Justin Rogers typically doesn't do that type of stuff, but to me that was more sensational. It had nothing to do with the rest of the story. And what has Ben Johnson got to lose by calling Taylor Decker? Nothing. And it's probably a feel out position. Hey man, sorry that's happening. We have a spot on our line if you for $7 million, like whatever. Like that's like the Lions can't just do that. Taylor Decker asked for his release, which the Lions granted. And now you want them to call you and say, hey, how you doing? No, you asked for your release, man. It's like, and this story come out like 2 weeks after the release. Like what? No time has gone by. It's not like 3 years have went by and you're like, no one's ever called me. It's like 2 weeks. They're going through free agent. They got all this draft process. There's been no dead time. They're not sitting around thinking, oh my God, what if Taylor's mad at us? No, you asked for your release. You could have said, you could have did whatever, but you didn't. You asked to be released. You haven't been signed by anybody else. Wondering if he could even pass a physical at this point. We've seen Max has failed his physical. Could Taylor even? Maybe that's why he's not signing right now. It blows my mind, and I think that like I saw some stuff. People are like, oh, let's make Lions look bad. If anything, I think it's the other way. I think it just shows that Taylor's salty. He's never been broken up with before by an NFL team. He doesn't know how that situation goes. But the Lions aren't going to spend time talking to you when they have other things that are going on. They just aren't. They just don't have time right now.
Yeah, they asked Dan Campbell about it, and I think he was probably surprised that the whole thing went out. But Dan Campbell's been a player too. And he said, some of these, when it comes to players or coaches, his exact quote was, I had a coach that we talked every day. He would send me messages. We would talk. The minute I go to another team, I never heard from him again. It wasn't being vindictive, but it's also like, well, you're not part of the team anymore, and all my focus is on this. So I think that probably, came out of left field. He also said, like, I'll call Decker. Not right now after this article came out, because he wants it to be real and wants it to be authentic, which was probably always the plan. Like you said, it's been a few, we did not let this go on forever.
Yeah.
Right. What do you want us just calling, begging you to come back? Or I don't understand. I don't think this is a great look by Taylor Decker. I think this is just another way for him to try to, make the Lions look bad or give one last little, nudge before he goes on elsewhere. I still don't think there's no way he's going to get as much money as he was going to here.
No, he's not. I just don't. I think that he's going to end up retiring. I mean, he is probably just salty about the whole thing. He's upset that the Lions broke up with him and it just fell the way it is. He's also probably disappointed too. He wanted to win that Super Bowl. He's realizing he's not going to get that feeling. If the Lions do win the Super Bowl, that he's not going to be on the team when they do that. And I'm sure that, that's tough to take. You especially as close as the Lions got 2 years ago, to feel, and then, the bad, not making the playoffs last year. That's not the way he wanted to end that thing. He didn't want to end it that way. So he's probably fighting a lot of feelings out there. But I don't know. I don't think the story came out in Taylor Decker's favor, and not the way that Justin wrote it or anything like that. It's just when I'm reading between the lines, I just feel like I don't feel bad for him at all, to be honest with you.
And a lot of people wanted to move on from him, right? That was the move that a lot of people wanted to make.
Well, you got, Dan Campbell also said in that same interview, you got $11 million. He signed 3 players for what, for the money that they lost in Taylor Decker. So it's like, yeah, the Lions, I don't think at the end point the Lions were like, we need to get rid of Taylor Decker. He's a bad seed. It's just, what is going to make this team better overall. And that's just the way it worked out. And I'm sure that, that hurt his feelings. Now, another situation that I don't think makes the Lions look good is the Frank Ragnow situation. Dave Burkett asked Rod Wood about, did they ask for some of the bonus money back from Frank? And, it came out that they did. So I'll let you, what do you think about that whole situation?
Rod's retiring pretty soon, right? Like, what are you doing, like, putting this information out there right now? Terrible look. This, coincides with the Taylor Decker stuff, just making the team look bad. This one, though, actually, where we both, I guess, kind of feel the same way about the Taylor Decker things. That's Decker, feeling hurt, feeling some way. This was not Frank Ragnow that came out with this. This was Rod Wood offering up this information and then bringing up, well, we held Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson the same standard. It's like, yes, Rod, we know. We all remember the scrutiny that we took and, alienating Calvin Johnson for how many years. It's just a terrible look. And I know they didn't put specific numbers on it, but the fact that it happened at all, his quote, Rod Wood said, the reality is they're not paying back their money. They're returning our money because they were paid in advance for services that they hadn't completed. Is that right? Yes, technically, right? I guess, I suppose. But how much could you really get back that is affecting our numbers? How many pennies are you talking about? Is it $1 million? Like, it was a $6 million bonus. You're not getting all of that back. You're not getting half of that back. And it just doesn't matter. The fact that you're asking for anything back at all when Frank did what Frank did. This isn't somebody that, I think Rod offered up, like, if we paid Gibbs $20 million, he retires on Friday, would we get that money back? It's not the same situation. This guy put his body on the line for how long? And then he even offered to, he tried to come back last year. What are we doing? I hate it. I really, really hate that.
Yeah, it just seems petty and stupid to me. Like, why ask for any of that back? And the fact that you're going back, and saying, well, we asked Barry and Kelvin to do it, does it mean you can't learn from your past mistakes? Obviously that worked out terribly for us for a long time. The Kelvin thing just dragged out forever. And I get it. Okay, we are scratching for any pennies on the cap, right? It's obvious, right? We are not signing anyone for, we signed one player this year for, more than a 1-year deal. Everybody else has been at vet minimum or very close. So, could we use that money in our cap? Yeah, we could. But is it worth the bad PR? Is it worth a player wondering, okay, if I got to retire earlier, the Lions are going to ask for my money back. Most teams are not going to do not do this, especially to an all-pro player. It's the Dahlman thing that's happening in Chicago is interesting. He's retiring early. I think they're going to ask for that money back, but he was with the team for 1 year and then decided to retire at 27. I don't really, he hasn't really said why he's retiring, but it's not like he was on injured reserve and, there's some sort of injury risk. Maybe there's a concussion history. I don't know, but it's a totally different situation than this Frank Ragnow situation. And it's also a lot more money, a lot more bonus money. Whereas you're, talking, I think it's up to $3 million that we can recoup. And Rod even said that we're not asking for all the money back. So you're basically asking for a vet minimum contract at most to get back. Is that worth all this bad PR? In my opinion, no, it's not.
No, it's not. I agree. And then, they asked him about it again. He was like, oh, if I paid attention to the optics of how things sound or whatever, we wouldn't get much done and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's just a bad look. More information that did not need to come out right now either.
Yeah, and like you said, Frank didn't say anything about it. He probably was just going to be like, and who knows? I don't know if it bothers him or not. I'm sure it does to some extent, but it's not bothering him enough that he was going to, display that. Dave Burkett asked him the question. Rod answered it. Whether he was prepared to answer it, I'm going to beg the question that he wasn't. Just the way he answered it and just how he tried to cover it up. Um, it just i- along with him being all pro, like you said, I think he talked about like all the injuries that he tried to play through, a fractured throat, he tore his pec and he, played like 2 weeks later. That this guy was a beast at toe that's inoperable. I mean, he gave everything for you and played at a super high level. I just don't think this is the way you want to treat those type of players.
I mean, he said he was ready to come back when he had a torn quad.
Yeah,
He was like,
I
"Give me
know.
a helmet, let's go."
Yeah, it's just a bad look. Kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. There's Dan Campbell gave you know like a 30-minute interview at the team meetings down in Arizona. If you haven't listened to that, I do encourage you to listen to it because I think that there's a lot of tidbits that you could get from that I think that's good. That sometimes it's just the way he's talking and his body language that I think you can get more out of it than just reading an article about what he actually said. So I do recommend listening to that. Was there anything in there, or what was the most like when you think about that interview, Jacob? Was there anything that jumped out to you that either surprised you or you like to hear?
I know you have it highlighted about the joint practice thing. That was interesting because that's been kind of a staple. Is that we do
Mhm.
the joint practice during the preseason, and now it sounds like we're not going to do the joint practice anymore. But maybe we do get to see some of our starters in the preseason, which is something that we talked about, and that was heavily debated as to why they weren't playing in the preseason when most teams do that. So I think that was the first noteworthy thing, anyway. What were your thoughts on the
Mhm.
joint practice? I know you like the joint practice thing.
I love going to the joint practices. I loved it. I'm going to be disappointed that when we go this year that it won't be to a joint practice. However, I get why he's saying you know, he never said it was an injury thing. Like if you listen to that, he just said
Right.
he's not getting as much done with it. My feeling after, especially after listening to Rod Wood, was that I do think that there's something to that. I do think that the injury stuff played into that decision. But I also feel like Dan made the point like we get an extra practice, and I'm wondering like early on maybe it was that hey we need to we need to up the competition in this space. But last year we had the Texans come in and Dolphins, and the Dolphins practice was, I mean, we just blew them out of the water. It wasn't even like close. Like, what did we possibly get out of that? The Texas thing was closer. That I think that we could teach better situationally, and there's less injury risk if we control it a little bit more. So I'm okay. I'm okay with no joint practices. I think there's less to get out of them now than there was in the years past when people were fighting for starting jobs. A lot of those things are already settled in this team. I would say less starting jobs this year are settled than last year, but at the same time, a lot of things are locked in, and we just need to be better than ourselves. I'm okay with it.
Right. He said, keep it about us. Said we get to work, we set the schedule, hit everything that they want to hit. They don't have to rely on the other team for time and what the other team wants to touch on and do this and that. They're just getting extra practice just with us and doing it the way that they want to, seeing what they want to see.
I am interested, and one thing I will like is that I am assuming we're going to see a lot of starters. I'm assuming that Jared Goff is going to be in a preseason game this year. I'd be pretty shocked if he's not. And also, I think the other advantage, and I think you'll like this, and this is probably surprised you didn't say it earlier, was that the offensive line is going to be vastly new. Like, and it's going to be nice to get them in a game situation. I don't care if it's even for a half or whatever, but just getting them to play together in a game situation, I think is going to be really useful.
Absolutely. Any little hiccups that you have would happen in the preseason instead of in week 1 against the Packers.
Exactly. We saw what it was like, like we're missing calls, we're running different plays, like,
Yeah, right.
the
We don't
offensive
need that.
linemen was running different plays. And yes, I'd like to get that done. Now, is there an injury risk? Yes. But I think there's also an injury risk in those joint practices too. Obviously, we just talked about it a little bit ago. Whether one's more than the other, I don't I don't know. But I do think there is something to playing under the lights, especially if you're a young player, those rookies just getting out there under the lights, getting through game prep. And I don't care what you could, it's easier to simulate that stuff in a stadium under lights as opposed to on a practice field. And, it's just a little more nonchalant out there. So I am excited about that. Plus, for us, like watching the game, I think it'll be a little more exciting seeing the starters out there too.
Right. Definitely. I wanted them to play in the preseason, get that a little bit last year. So I'm okay with getting rid of the joint practice and giving them some reps in the preseason.
Another thing that I liked is they asked him about Petzing, and the stuff that he said about Petzing being like super prepared, him saying Petzing come up telling him something, he's like, Dan saying, I don't like that. And then he had solutions already made up, like, okay, we're not going to do this, we could do this. And just everything that he said about him is everything that John Morton wasn't last year to me. Like, just seems like John Morton just wanted to go with the flow and just like keep things going. Petzing just seems like a guy that's like, is going to push the buttons, push this offense to a place that it couldn't reach last year. And I'm really excited about it. I got really fired up about the Petzing hire again after hearing Dan talk about him.
Right. He said like he adjusts, he's in the flow, nothing throws him off. Like, adapt and adjust to whatever you want, whatever you need. And he's like, we're going to make it work. We're going to maximize it. And Johnny Moe maybe had too much to a fault of like, this is the plan. We're going to see the plan through without adapting or adjusting.
Or maybe Johnny Moe didn't feel like, he was walking in. It's like, this is already, he said it before. He's like, I don't want to change everything. Everything's working. And in the NFL, you can't do that. I mean, you don't come in and just like tear it all the way down, start from scratch. But you have to be willing to like adapt and, evolve as an offense. And it was obvious last year that, obviously Dan took the play calling sheet away from him. So, it just didn't work out. I will also say that he also mentioned that Petzing didn't have a lot to work with in Arizona, but he kept, getting the best matchups that he could. And I do like that thought for the Lions. Like, where are mismatches? And a lot of them are going to be Gibbs, right? And setting up mismatches for JMO, getting him set up that he could get, an open space. Like I'm jacked about what the offense can do this year.
Right.
The other quote that I like that, Dan said, it was like right off the first question. He's like, it's been a little bit of a rebirth. That's what he said at the beginning. And he said later on that he wants his players to have some of that saltiness that they had 2 or 3 years ago when they weren't respected. And that's the part about getting young players that are, that have something to show for this, show. And that's what they want. I know we lost a Meek, and that would be a guy that I would think is super salty. We're going to need another guy to come in and provide that with the team. So I like that whole analogy with the saltiness that he said.
Right. He said, obviously everything starts with grit, but he did say that they felt like we just need to get younger in some areas. So unfortunately that means, Anzalone, Decker, some of those guys are not here anymore. Get younger, get hungrier, I guess. I thought it was interesting. He kind of snuck it in that, when he was talking about the guys losing, he mentioned DJ Reader, right? And he said, Reader's still out there, so we'll see. So that makes it sound like maybe that's not completely off the table, that, if Reader is willing to come back at a discounted rate, they'd probably welcome him back.
I think that they do want him back, but I think it's going to be two things. It's going to be probably not as many snaps. He might not be the starter anymore. That's probably like Tyleek's, if Tyleek's not starting by year 2, then that's a rough first round
pick. Not what you want for your
first
round, yeah.
No, exactly. And, they probably have a price in mind for Reader. And whether Reader's going to come back for that price, that's probably, that's up for debate. But we'll see. But yeah, the door's not closed on Reader for sure.
Also, when they mentioned Wanham, when they're talking about the defensive reset, and he mentioned Wanham, it's like, do we draft somebody? Are we more of this 4 down? Do we become 5 down? Do we become more nickel dependent? He said, we have flexibility, and, him, Shep, they've sat down, they're ready to adapt. They're going to get, the best players they can get, and that's what we're going to roll with. But they have the flexibility of doing different things and not just doing base.
Yep. Yeah, they have. He said with Shep, he's got like 3 different options depending on how the rest of free agency goes and the draft goes. So it's like they're already preparing for this and whether they draft an edge high. He also said that Wanham could spell Aiden, which I thought was interesting because I think Wanham would be on the opposite of Aiden most of the time, but it was interesting that he slipped that in there. And I think they have plans for Levi on the outside. I mean, they did ask him about Levi, and he said as long as Levi's healthy, he's going to be out there. That's the big question is his health. They did ask him about TA. There wasn't really much there. I thought, he kind of just said, what you know is what I know. He did talk about Rock in that situation, but the other thing is him wanting to move Penei to left tackle. Like he said
Yeah.
that's what he wants to do. Like probably just depends on who they draft and the comfortability of that situation. But it sounds like he wants Penei on Goff's, blind side. And he said the comfortability of knowing who's back there is going to make off. And he said if pressure is going to come, at least you're going to be able to see it if it's on the right tackle. So I thought that was interesting.
Definitely. He downplayed the whole like blindside thing a little bit, but I mean, he was acknowledging that he would like to have Penei on the left. And he said it's a little bit like riding a bike. He gets his stance down just for a little bit, and then he's good to go. Which I think we all feel that way. Like Penei does such a good job on the right side. If you move him to the left, I imagine he's going to do just as good. Be a little bit of an adjustment period in training camp, but overall, it's not going to be something that you have to worry about him having some sort of drastic fall off by moving.
Yeah. No, Penei is a dog. He's going to make it work either way. It does put a little bit of microscope on just the team in general, just because everyone's going to be really watching him. And if he does give up pressure, it's going to be like, oh, we moved him. We screwed him all up. We had an all-pro right tackle. Now we put him at left. And I think even Tristan Wirfs struggled a little bit when they switched him over from right tackle to left tackle. But now he's back up to, his all-pro level. And I think that I'm not really worried about that. And Penei has played left tackle, like even Dan brought it up in the thing. When Taylor Decker was hurt, Penei's already played left tackle in the NFL. So and he played obviously in Oregon. So it's not like it's switching to a brand new position. He's been over there. It's, he said what Dan say, it's kind of like riding a bike for him.
Right. My whole reasoning for wanting to not have to move him to the left is that that's just an extra person that you have to, I'm all about the sync of the offensive line, everyone being together. If we are moving, like let's say Juice Scruggs is going to become a starter, you're going to say Ratledge, Mays. If Scruggs starts over Mahogany, you move Penei to one side, and then you have a rookie starting on the other side. It's just going to take some time to adapt for them to really mesh like as a unit. That was why I think it would be easier if you have somebody that you could play on the left. I just don't see anybody that we would draft that's going to be able to come right in on the left. And obviously, especially with Goff not being as mobile, you need him to be comfortable in the pocket. You need somebody really good on the left side. Yes. And Penei, I think, is a very big upgrade over what Decker did last year. And if you get a rookie 100%. Right tackle in there, I mean, this might be what's best for the offensive line.
And Ash says that maybe if Penei's over there, we could start running to the left side too. Because our big runs were to the right side. Now we could start running back to the left because Penei would be back over there.
Right.
I am so looking forward to next year having a better offensive line. It's going to make Gibbs look even better. If Gibbs gets to the second level, he had trouble getting to the second level just because the holes weren't there. If we could start getting him to the second level, it's over because his speed's going to take off. So I'm really hoping this comes to fruition and we get a solid tackle. And then our offensive line outside of Penei Sewell becomes extremely cheap, which is good for the re-signing everybody else.
Absolutely.
All right. I don't really have anything else to that Dan Campbell interview unless you do.
Nope. I thought it was funny that he said for the Germany trip, he was trying to get them to do a cruise ship back. He's like, we can game plan. He's like, the hot tub, the pools, like they have all that. We can do that. And then they brought it to his attention. It would take like 8 days.
Well, can you imagine how much food they would need for the offensive linemen alone on that cruise ship? Oh my God.
Right.
Whew. Oh man, I've been on a cruise ship. You could eat a lot, but man, those guys can eat way more than I can. All right, before we take off here, Jacob, I don't know if you saw this or not. This was on NFL Network. They had a trade proposal for the Lions. the Lions would trade Sam Laporta and the 17th overall pick and a 6th rounder. And what we would get in return is the 7th overall pick. So we move up 10 spots in the first round. We get another 3rd rounder and we get tight end Ben Sinnott. Would you even entertain that trading Laporta like that and just to move up 10 spots?
We're losing Laporta and moving up 10 spots and getting a 3rd rounder. No, I don't like the thought of not having Laporta on this team.
Yeah, Laporta's that strong for you that, I mean, I wouldn't move him up for these 10 spots and the 3rd rounder. I wouldn't do it either. Is there any, I mean, if you got a flat 1st rounder for Laporta, say it's he's at the back end, you're not giving up anything. You're just getting a 1st rounder for Laporta. Would you do it? I don't think another team would. You would do it. Yeah, I probably would too.
I think you'd have to, with the injury and everything and the draft happening right now. I mean, if you're getting an extra 1st round pick out of it, I still like Laporta, and you'd have to hit on that pick. Now, and you'd also, you'd be in the pressure to draft a tight end.
You would. I mean, you're getting one back here, but yeah, you're going to have to get a tight end. But this gets you up possibly to get, I mean, it's 7th round. It's possible to get the tight end or the left tackle from Miami, Francis. I always want to say his name wrong.
I think
Mauigoa. Yeah, no, that's right, Mauigoa. I mean, that puts you in there, so you're getting the number 1 tackle as opposed to the 3rd or 4th tackle. I mean,
are you so sure about him, 1, being there, and 2, being the guy that you want, that you pull that trigger though? Because what do? You pull him up and then he's gone. What's the fall off between him and the next highest ranked tackle?
Yeah, then you're getting Spencer Fennell or Monroe Freeling, and then it falls out. This is a draft day trade. Number 7 pick comes up, and you say, "Oh my God, he's it's there."
Who has number 7 that they're wanting us to give? I didn't recognize the name that you said that we get in return, so I don't know what team that is. But
Ben Sinnott, it's the Commanders.
It's the Commanders. I don't know much about Ben Sinnot, so I don't know.
I mean, he's not going to be any. That's just replacing a tight end on your roster.
Right.
He's obviously not. He's not. He's a young guy, but he's not Sam Laporta. I mean,
But in that scenario, you're moving up 10 picks and you're gaining a 3rd round. I can't say it's necessarily a bad trade. I just would not like it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get rid of Laporta, so.
Yeah, no, either do I. I want Sam Laporta on this team. Obviously, depending on the back injury. But yeah, let's have him back for 1 year. But we did trade TJ Hawkinson, but our team was in a totally different spot at that point too.
What did we get for Hawkinson?
I know. What did we get for Hawkinson? It was a pretty good return because it was in the middle of the season.
We traded him. We traded Hawkinson, a 4th round pick, Hawkinson and 2 4s for a 2nd and a 3rd.
Yeah, 2nd and a 3rd. I wouldn't trade. Sam Laporta's better than Hawkinson.
Right.
Like I could say, I think Sam Laporta's better in every area of the game. He's a better blocker for sure. I think he is a better receiver with his hands, but he's also better with yak. Now it's closer. The receiving potential is closer with him than the blocking. I think Sam just kills him in the blocking. TJ just never seemed like he really wanted to get his, hands dirty like that. I don't think he was afraid of it, but that wasn't something that he would go to. The other issue is that, you trade Sam and then that opens up cap space and then you're more likely to retain Branch and stuff like that. So there is a benefit besides just moving up 10 picks. I'm with you. I'd rather have Sam on this team. I think we saw what happened with our offense last year after we, lost Sam, especially I think the underrated part of Sam's game is his yak. He is so good when he catches the ball to get just, it's not like he has to get a ton of yards, but he's not falling down right away. He's getting 3, 4, 5 yards or more after he gets that ball. And if you get him in the open field, he will juke you and he will get extra yards. He's really effective.
He's got a couple highlight plays of him getting to the end zone after the catch.
Right. Yep. So good show, man. We are in. Is there anything else that you guys surprised me with at the end here?
No, man, I'm good.
Surprised you with the trade proposal.
It was nice, doing it earlier in the day.
Yeah, I'm sure. You're in that small space, man. You told me you got a window because I said if you fart in there, you're gonna have to. I'll see you with the nose clip on or something like that.
Yeah, there's 2 windows. There's plenty of ventilation. It's gonna be okay.
So the kids could look and stare at you while you're doing the podcast? Holding up
Until
signs?
right before we went live, they were both underneath this desk laying down watching their tablets, and I had to kick them out of here. So
Get
it's
outta
already
here.
started.
All right, man. So that's cool that you got this room, man. I'm so excited for you, so happy for you, and what it means for our show. We could go a little bit earlier and have some fun. So I do want to thank Ash for providing so many comments on there. I had almost thought yesterday saying, "Hey Ash, we're going on at 5:30. You won't have to stay up late. You could jump in," but it's kind of last minute. Didn't want to do it, but I also want to shout out Tim Loomis for hitting us up on here. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and if you're listening at home, we're going to be live next week 8:30. Love to have you guys on while we're doing the mock draft. Give us your input. That would be a lot of fun. Not next week, but the week after. Right now, where Petzing and Eric Schlitt's going to be on. That's going to be the 15th at 8:30. I would highly recommend you guys watch that show. I would highly recommend you watch that live. We will try to get your questions in. Depending on how many people show up, I can't promise that all questions will be asked. But when you talk about draft experts, there's few people as far as the Lions specifically that I would pick over Eric and his just knowledge of all the draft picks. So I would highly recommend you, if you can't catch us live, watch that, listen to that. We got him on a week before the draft, which is going to be great. Anything else, Jacob?
No. Can't wait, man.
All right.
3 weeks to the draft.
All right. Yeah, we're getting there, man. All right, man. He's Jacob. I'm Jason. Let's go Lions.